Yeah, what about now? seeing other user groups adapting to a strictly digital format. Uh, Seeing no audio in the chat.
Yeah, that's
There
my
it is.
fault. I forgot to push the button.
No problem. So yeah, but about this, we saw so much success with other virtual events and virtual formats, and uh, missing big time events like um, PowerShell and DevOps Global Summit that would have happened last month. And there's so much wonderful content and great speakers in this community that this seemed like a really cool and interactive way to kind of uh, bring them into your homes and bring that content forward to share with everybody.
Excellent. Yeah. So again, so we're excited to have Jeff Hicks here with us. So Jeff, we'll just go ahead and let you kick it off. You want to tell us a little bit about maybe a little bit about yourself, and then kind of what you're going to talk to us about.
Okay. I'm old. I've been doing PowerShell a long time. I try to help people solve problems. I try to have fun with it, and that's what we're going to do today. Have some
All right.
fun.
Awesome. Well, we'll Jeff, go ahead and share your screen out, and we'll get started.
All right. So let's see if I can get this all to work the way I want it to. All right. So you should see, let me move some things around so I can keep an eye on people. All right, so I wanted to talk about today what I'm calling PowerShell candy. Nothing here is, going to change your life. At least I don't think it will. None of it is super mission critical in things that you might do with PowerShell, but it's just some things that I've been playing with lately to make PowerShell look pretty. Because I stare at a PowerShell prompt for hours at a time. Pretty much I live my entire day at a PowerShell prompt. And so I'm always looking for ways to make it visually interesting. And maybe you need that as well for maybe building reports or in a prompt or just output of a function where you want to add a little visual excitement or some element to it. So there are lots of things that you can do. A lot of the stuff I'm going to show you is all just, as again, it's pretty much purely cosmetic, although you could turn it into something more practical. My demos, a lot of them are very silly and really just kind of putting a lot of different things together, probably overkill. You would probably not need to use all of these techniques all at once, although I tend to like to see how far can I push things, so you'll see some of that. All of the files I'm going to try to demo in the next hour or so are up in this GitHub link, and the guys will make sure that you have access to that link. So I'm just going to walk through a script file. This is my PS Candy. Again, this is up on GitHub. This just has all the files, all the commands I want to run, but I'm actually going to run them in a PowerShell 7 terminal running in Windows terminal. Really, a lot of the stuff I'm going to show you are designed to be run from the console. Some of it will work in VS Code, some will work in the ASCII, a lot of it won't work in the ASCII, and hopefully most of you are moving on anyway. So we're going to be using a PowerShell console to display all of these things. The script file is just for me to walk through. So a number of the things I'm going to show you excuse me, are part of a module that you can install from the PowerShell gallery. I'll call PS Script Tools. And I already have that loaded into my PowerShell session. So we're going to get to some things later that you're going to want that. So let's first of all talk about characters. And you all know that you can run, let's go to caremap.exe. Give this a moment, figure out which screen it's going to show up on. Why? There it is. I don't know why in Windows 10 it seems to take forever to show up. So you all know that in Windows or in PowerShell, text that you look at here can be done, they're all character objects. Well, the character map here can also be used to do similar things. So let's say that I need to display, for example, this paragraph symbol. Now, what you're going to get here is a Unicode, hover over this here again, a Unicode sequence, which I believe, let me copy and paste this here if I did this right. Yep. So the Unicode part, so you see U plus 0, 0, that you're going to do 0x00 and then B6. So if I go back to, so there you can see, and unfortunately I don't have Zoom it installed here, but you can see that this is 0, 0 plus B6. So you can just create all of these special characters, for example, like the lozenge. If you come to, scroll down here in character map, here's where all the fun stuff is. So let's say that you want to put in, say, this black circle, which is 25 CF. So I can do character, or I forgot already what it was called, 25 CF. And put that in. Now I decided, you know what? I need a much easier way to do this. So in that module I just told you about, the PS Script Tools module, I built an array, an object that's loaded into your PowerShell session called PS Special Character. If I can't type and talk absolutely at the same time. So if I decide, you know what, I need to display, say, a spade for some reason, I can just do my PS Special Character, spade. So I don't have to try to remember what the sequence is. And it's just a hash table. So if you have other things that you say, oh, I need to use this character all the time, you can just put that in. So it just kind of simplifies things. If I want, say, a heart. Let's say I want 10 of these hearts. This is the tricky part. You kind of need to treat this as a string. And what am I doing wrong here? Yeah, we'll come back to that. I think I have some other demos later. That's what I get for going off script here. Oh, here it is right here. Not as an array of strings, but as a single string. So there we go. So that's how I could create 10, or in this case, 20 diamonds. So if you were doing this one way, you could also do, like, if you wanted to build a header and have some color to it. Yeah, this is where it gets tricky, because I need to do, there we go. So there are some things that you can do to add a little color. Now, we'll come back to these special characters, because there are other things we can do, especially now much easier in PowerShell 7, to really make things look kind of fun and fancy. So that's character map. So you can find other characters, and then you can display them. Now, I will warn you that some of the characters may or may not display, depending upon whether you're in the ASCII or VS Code or the legacy or traditional PowerShell consoles or terminal. It may also depend what font you're using for your console. So there's no absolutes. Yes, this will work everywhere, but it's something that you can certainly try. So the next thing I wanted to show you was this idea of ASCII art. And I have a script here, and some of this I've shared before, but in case you haven't seen it. So there is a website, and this guy put together this little this web service that has a list of fonts, and you give it a string of text and a font name, and it will go through and create some ASCII art. So I have this function here that will go through and create ASCII art based on the function or the font that you use. Here, I'll bring up the font list. So the font list, unfortunately, is just text. You will have to kind of experiment to see what these fonts do. There are really a lot of them. Some fonts will work better for others. Depends also on how much text you're trying to format or display or convert. So let me show you here. So I gave this function an alias of cart. So if I do cart and give it a string and then a font. So it goes through, takes the text, and then converts it to ASCII art based on the font that I specify. Now, some of these won't quite work if you have like a really long word. I think I saw a battleship font. Thought I saw one. Let's try banner. So that's not too bad. You got to think about if you're using this, where you want to put it. So what I've done with this is, where is, I'm going to jump ahead here. I think I got my demos out of order, but let's try this. So in my PowerShell prompt, and I'll show you my prompt here at the end, it calls this script that has 3 text blocks, say good morning, Jeff, good afternoon, good evening. And so my prompt function says, hey, what time of day is it? And so it determines which one of these to display. And I just got this font by doing my convert to ASCII art and then just saved it and pasted it in here. Now what this is going to do with this is use ANSI, which I'm going to show you here in a moment. So if I do, in fact, I think I can run this right now. Now let me make I zoomed in on my font. Normally my terminal session the font isn't that big. That's not too bad. So every time I start PowerShell, I get a nice little greeting. So how does this ANSI stuff work? Because this is the really cool stuff. And as you see, you can start combining a lot of these things together. Oh, before we get to that though, let's do one other artsy thing. And that is something I've been playing with lately, and that's emojis. Now, I'm an old school kind of guy. You know, the whole emoji thing is I'm probably an okay boomer kind of thing. It's like, oh, I really shouldn't be doing this, but I'm embracing it and saying primarily because to see what can I do with PowerShell. So I have a link here that shows you all of the Unicode listings for emojis, because emojis are nothing more than another special character. And all you need to know is how do I display that Unicode string as a character object. And I have a script here called PS Emoji's got two functions. There is convert to emoji and show emoji. Now this is where it gets a little tricky here, because the emoji, the way that the Unicode value is structured, it's too big a number to display as a standard character string or character value. So you have to do this little convert from UTF-32. You're never going to remember that. That's why I wrote the function to make this a little bit easier. So let's do the convert to emoji first. Let's see if I've loaded this function here. All right, so I happen to know that the emoji for the smiling face, so now I can see what the emoji is. The show emoji allows you to put in a starting range, like 0x1f600, and then how many do I want to see? So let's say 40. So just I came up with a nice way to display in columns the emoji, so I can see what it is and I can see the value. So what I've done in my PowerShell prompt, just to kind of tease you here, is it might be, let's minimize some stuff. So if you look here, you can see I've got a cocktail glass because it's, you know, a little after 1, so, and I'm home, so why not? Up above, that's a sandwich because it was like around lunchtime. So throughout the day, I have a little emoji that changes in my PowerShell prompt. I kind of teased this last week with a coffee cup in the morning. And yes, by the end of the day, it turns into a martini glass. So nothing, obviously, there's zero business value there, but I'm looking at my prompt. And so it's fun. It gives me a little reminder, oh, hey, I should go get a drink, or I should go eat lunch, because I'm prone to just sit here and just work. So emojis are kind of fun if you need to do that. And I've got two functions to make it really easy for you to discover what they are and how to use them. All right, how are we doing on time? So let's talk about ANSI escapes. So ANSI escape codes, and you have two sources here. One is, I might as well bring up this page. So an ANSI escape sequence will allow you to specify basically colors and other text effects. Josh Duffney wrote a great chapter in the PS7 Now ebook, which you can get, that talks a lot about ANSI and how to use it in PowerShell. Now you already have ANSI escape characters in PowerShell right now. Let's come back here. If you were to look at, let's come back to my no profile session. Get PS read line. Option. You can see that all of the colors now are displayed as ANSI escape sequences. And this is also true in Windows PowerShell. So this is the Windows PowerShell 5.1. The big difference is the escape character. So in Windows PowerShell, the escape character needs to be or is listed as, this char 0x1b. And typically you have to then put that all in as a sub-expression. So that is the escape character. So the ANSI sequence goes escape character, and then your ANSI sequence, which is typically going to be a colon and then some number. And that's what I have here. So like 92 or whatever, you can set a foreground color. So you can see 92 is green, 91 is M. You can get to 256 colors with like this sequence here. In PowerShell 7, it's much easier because you can just use the backtick E. So I tend to do all my stuff in PowerShell 7, so that's what I have. You can use this in PowerShell 7. So this will work in both. The backtick E only only works in PowerShell 7. So what I have done, because often I'll bring up like this PowerShell session. This is my Windows PowerShell with no profile. And the default, with the color schemes I'm using, the default PS readline colors are hard to read. And so I have a script that I wrote that I can call, manually to just go through and update my colors. So I have, in this case, because I can use the same script in both PowerShell 7 and in Windows PowerShell, I could have just used the escape sequence, this one, for everything, but I put in some logic, say, hey, if you're running core CLR, meaning PowerShell 7, then my escape character can be this or it can be that. And then I just use the set PS readline option and specify additional colors or different colors, so it makes my screen easier to read. Now, one thing I realized that I've done is in my regular profile, I'm calling this script. So I end up dot sourcing my escape sequence, which is kind of cool. So now if I'm in PowerShell 7 and I'm building something at the command prompt, I could do $ESC. It was a fun little thing. So you can change colors. So here, if I run this, well, I'll run it again. So now my parameter color is this cyan, this 96M. The operator color is this bright green. The comment is also bright green, and a string is this kind of bright cyan. Because the default colors just were too hard for me to read in Windows Terminal. So now they're easy to update. Once you start discovering how to use all these ANSI sequences, you'll find all sorts of reasons to use them. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's give you a taste here. Make this bigger. So what you have to do when you're using ANSI is I have my opening sequence. In this case, I want to make it green. You need to or should include, after the text that you want to turn this on, include a closing or reset sequence, which is the escape bracket 0M. If I don't put in the closing or the reset, then all of my text now will be that color, and that's not what I want. You can do things like make it a little bolder. And if you go back and read that Wikipedia page, you'll see these listed. That may be hard to see on the screen. The second one is a little bit brighter for me. You can reverse things, so there are some fun text things that you can do. One thing to be careful of, and this kind of burned me as I was working with this, all right, so that's what we just saw. Let me bring up Notepad. Drag it over here. So the escape sequence becomes part of the string. So if I were to like save this to a variable, that length of the string includes the ASCII sequences here. So you can see I got the little escape non-printable character there. So just keep that in mind. It becomes part of the actual output. But none of this is using right host. This is actually, as you see here, it's an object being written to the pipeline, but it has formatting attached to the text so that you can output things that you want. And that's what I've done with my ANSI greeting. So depending on the hour of the day, I do my escape sequence and then do the appropriate AM or PM or evening. My original versions down here were much longer, and I said, you know what, I'm going to trim this down and just do the more informal Jeff. With any questions so far, guys, that I need to address? Am I going too fast, too slow?
No, I haven't seen anything so far. Thomas, have you?
Have people gotten bored and left?
No, you're all good, I think.
All right. So we've got some components here of special characters, emojis, ANSI, clip art, or ASCII art. So now we can start putting some of these things together. One of the commands in the PS Script Tools module is something called add border, which by default just adds a simple asterisk text border around whatever text that you want. And you can also do multiple lines if you have a bigger block. I recently updated the module so that I have additional parameters. So I can say display, my text, but make the text using an ANSI color. So I can make it green. Or I said, you know what? I also want to be able to not only change the color, but I want to change the character that's used for the border. So here I'm going to use my special character and use the white circle. And I'm then going to change the color of that circle element I'm using for the border. And so I get something kind of wild and wacky like that. You see that okay? Now, even though the special character, by the way, is white circle, it becomes obviously whatever color I change it to. So don't let the names of the things fool you, because if I change this to, say, black square, which I think is one, obviously it's not black, it becomes that solid kind of fuchsia color. So with that, then I could start adding fun stuff like that say to a script or something. So that get PSWho is another command in the PS Script Tools module. And all I did was just change the color of the border and use, in this case, just an equal sign. So there's no special character there. So I've just added something. If I'm building a report, you know, it gives me nice, visually interesting information to look at. Once I started playing with the ANSI stuff, then I realized, oh, you know what? I can start playing and making bars because I like bars. If I can get my so I have a command called new ANSI bar. The original design was to give it a range of ASCII values, and this is basically 256 ASCII values. So the 232 to 255 that you see there are the values from this table here. So I'm basically going from 232 to 255 in my ANSI escape sequence. And so I go up to it and then I go back down to it. So I get that nice gradient from one to the other and then back down. And I've added some parameters here. So if I want, I can build different color. I can use different shapes. The spacing parameter will make it kind of, go back to 1. Can make it, you know, longer, shorter, depending on what you need to do. So once I saw that, then I realized, oh, because I always like looking at, you know, graphing, but doing it at the console in kind of an old school kind of way. Because then I started thinking, oh, I want like red to green. So that's basically at 100%. So from red to solid green. And if I run that, I can say, you know what, only do it though. Show me, let's say 55%. Or maybe I'm at, you know, 87%. Guys, see where I'm going with this? So I can display values and give a visual representation about, assuming that, you know, green 100% is good and the smaller number is kind of bad. So here's an example. In the PS Script Tools module, there are a number of sample files which you can get from the sample path. And we're going to look at this get status. Come on. So this is a sample file that kind of shows how you might use some of this ANSI stuff. So this is going to go through and get some information about a computer and then display the results. So I'm going to, I think I can just run this just as it is. All right, so I kind of a little overkill here, and it's probably could kind of hurt your eyes, but I've used a lot of the same techniques. I've just put them all together here. So I'm using add border. This is my computer name, and I've got my gradient bars. I'm using a special character and an ANSI color. The uptime, and I put in a little special character and made it green. The percent free memory and percent free C are color coded. So I've added some style here. ANSI format, build a little function to format the memory. So if the value is less than 20, then it's going to make it red or green or yellow. So that, remember, becomes part of the output. And the actual output of this is just a string, just a here string. It could be an object, but the values then would be strings. So I just do the whole thing as a string. So you can see I don't have, my C drive is somewhat low, 36.4% free. And then the free memory, I just used a different character. So I've got little bar graphs for that. Yeah, so you can have some fun with that. Or here is another one that I did called process percent. So this is going to go through and get the first 25 processes sorted by working set size, and then create a table. And part of the table is going to have an ANSI bar. Let's just show this to you. So now I can see, I might need to make this a little smaller. So there is the bar that I'm adding for this percent working set. And I've formatted the percent, and the ANSI bar then gives me a relative, come on, mouse, gives me a relative display of how much working set size that process is using. And that's just all part of the output. So some of these things really are aimed at just interactive use. It really wouldn't make much sense to try to export this, although you probably could. You know, I've written something, you know, it's kind of a sample, but I can run it and I can see and just use the results immediately. So I thought that was kind of fun. And then my PowerShell 7 prompt, as I showed you. Well, let's come back here. Okay, we don't need that. I guess I should fix hello. So you can see I have in my terminal prompt, and this only happens when I'm in PowerShell 7 in Windows Terminal. I have my calendar. I have a logo down here that will change depending, it changes like every 15 minutes. I have a script called rotate head that will do that. I can probably call it right now. All right, see, so there's Jason. I should probably add some new thumbnails. You can see here, I have the icon, the emoji just changed. And then my path, I just have highlighted the color changes in green. So the function itself, if you're interested here, is I have some emoji codes that I define for different times of day. And then depending on the time of day, I get a random emoji. I use my convert to emoji function. I do have a little code in here that if my path is too long, it truncates it. It's kind of something a little bit separate. All right, so here now is the business parts. So I write the date and then my little emoji glyph. In this case, I'm just using write host. I probably could use write object now, but my prompts have just evolved so much over the years. And in older prompts, you kind of tended to use write host if you were adding other, candy to your prompt. So here then is my path, and I'm using the 1 makes it a little bit brighter. That is actually over the version number here. And then the path itself is using this escape sequence. So that's the coloring part. And then that's all the text that gets colored. And then this is the closing sequence. And I've got code to display, where my calendar displays, because I've written this so that as I update this, that calendar is always up in that upper right corner. And my graphic then down here rotates every 11 minutes. So I've got a little variable that I keep track of, or like I said, I can just manually run it. Let's see who's up next.
Hey, Jeff, there was a question in the chat hoping you'd take a deeper dive into how you float the calendar on the right.
Sure. So my calendar, and let me come back over here so we're have something clean here. So the calendar function, which is part of the PS calendar module. So that's show calendar, and I may update this because right now show calendar is using write host. And now that we have better ANSI support, I probably will revise this. However, show calendar has a parameter where I can specify the position that I want my calendar to display on the screen. Okay, so that's the first thing. So what I wanted to do, or see if I can remember how I did this here, because this took quite a bit of trial and error. So that's a good question. So I defined, well, here we'll work our way backwards. So here's show calendar, and I'm using that dash position parameter, and I'm specifying a position which I'm creating by creating a system automation host coordinates object. And that needs 2 values. It basically needs the left and the right, if I remember right. Here, I've made my font so big. Sometimes, ISC is a little bit better for some of this stuff. So that needs an X and a Y. That's what I want to make sure. So the X is left and Y is 0. So in my case, I need to make sure that my calendar goes over X number of characters or spaces, and then it's starting 0 at the top. Now I have my Windows terminal has an element of padding, so I can adjust, whether, for example, this line here, that bracket, whether it's right at the edge of the terminal or in a little bit. So I've got some padding set. So that's why the month and year is down a little bit. As terms of the host, the coordinates X and Y, this is at 0, right? So I had to figure out, where is X going to be? So in my case, how do I define what $left is going to be? So $left, really, I just took the window size, $host.ui.raw UI, okay. And so I can see that width is 130. And then I calculated that the width of my calendar, the way that I'm using it, is 42. So I just subtract then, so I know that my width going over, I need to go over basically whatever 130 minus 42 is. So my X is going to be 88. The other code that I have here, I probably don't need anymore. I think I was playing with a buffer cell by creating a gray rectangle in my console, so I could kind of adjust and see where I needed to position the calendar. I have a feeling if I comment out these items here, I think these are redundant and unnecessary now. Yeah, those are unnecessary. I should probably go through and I can delete those from my. So that's how I position that. I just basically had to calculate where X was, where this needed to be. So now that's always up there. Now, what I only do though, in my profile script, down at the bottom, I have some code that says if I'm in Windows Terminal, which I can test by looking for the WT session environmental variable, then I'm going to .source my emoji function, I load my prompt function, I define some other default parameter values, and use my Windows Terminal toolbox stuff. So I only load this prompt that you see here if I'm in Windows Terminal. If I open up a traditional Windows 7 prompt, I don't get this particular prompt with the calendar and stuff. But I spend my entire day basically in Windows Terminal in this PowerShell 7 prompt, so I have my calendar. And these dates, by the way, are highlighted because with the calendar function, you can give it a dates and it will color code them. The red is the current date, and so I've got something coming up on June 5th, and because that looks like the first Friday in June, that's probably the PS Tweet Chat event. I don't have nearly as many green days these days on my calendar as I used to, so I look forward to green days. That means something exciting is going to happen. So those are just some fun things that I've been playing with between characters and emojis and using the ANSI sequences to build bars, create text. Here's another example. Let's come back over here. In the PowerShell, again, in the PS script tools, I added a feature here, a special table view called ANSI that will use basically a JSON file that says if the file type is this, then use this color. So I can look at files here in a particular color. Or there's also in the module, there's a show tree. And it has an ANSI parameter. And if I want to, say include so again, it uses the same ANSI map. So now all of my output can be color coded. I thought it was kind of cool. So you can put a lot of this stuff in the actual PS1 XML files, or put it in part of the output of your command. So I'm finding more and more ways to use the ANSI escape sequences. I think I'm tired of looking at just black and white text all the time. So questions, comments, other things, and we'll leave you some time.
Lots of appreciation in the chat, and folks who think this is really cool. I can see a lot of ideas forming in folks' minds, and more questions if they can play with this code.
Yeah, so all the code, I'll put all the code is up on GitHub. You should have the link. So unfortunately, the way that GitHub does this, if you follow the link, you'll get to this. The first file is ANSI greeting, but here are all the files that I worked with today. And the modules, you want PS script tools. So PS script tools has the add box and the special characters, hash table, and some the ANSI tools that I showed you. If you want the calendar stuff, that's in the PS calendar. And then all the other files that I walked through for my demos are up on GitHub. And if people do cool stuff, I hope they'll blog about it or tweet about it or share it, and because it does open up, I think, a lot of possibilities.
It's definitely a deep rabbit hole. I think I've sunk more hours than I care to admit to in a public setting, manipulating my prompt.
Oh, yeah. I have so many prompt functions. Yeah, your prompts are kind of they're a special thing. It's kind of a personal thing because it's your personal prompt because you are using it. And so you want to put in information in a prompt that's meaningful to you. Because like I said, I'm looking at this PowerShell prompt constantly throughout the day. So, or looking at this session. So the more that I can get what I need right from looking at it, like the time, even though I've got a clock down, in the bottom part of my taskbar, I got to take my focus away, and I don't want to do that. So I like being able to see, what time it is.
So sometimes
I've
it's
had
even just
other
nice
prompts
to
that
see what
I've
time the
used to
last
keep track of
command ran.
VMs running, and yeah, there's lots you can do.
Yeah, as you can see, sometimes it's just nice to have it on the line that you ran, the time that is, so you can see what time the last thing you ran was. Like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, I got the status of this Active Directory user and it said it was disabled. Oh, but that was 3 hours ago, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm toying with another Iron Scripter challenge that might be prompt related. I haven't come up with the final details yet, but that's an idea that's been percolating. In fact, there's a new Iron Scripter challenge out that was posted a little bit ago. So people looking for something to do.
Where can they go check those out?
Ironscripter.us.
And Jeff, someone else had a question. They want to know if the calendar will cover any of the output prompt at all that you have. So, like, if you have text that scrolls.
Yes, it will. Yes. So if I do, so it will lay over the top. If I, yeah, so there's a good example. So you can see that it does lay over. I don't know. I mean, I can't think of a way of telling it not to. Because there's no way of knowing if how far over the text is going to go. And I can't think of a way that I could, every time a command ran, to know how far it would be.
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
So if I know there's going to be a problem, I just scroll down and then run the command. Now, what I did find, and I think they made a change in Windows Terminal, is like when you use a background image, it really is in the background. And so because I think in previous versions, the text went behind it. I think, I could be mistaken, but I noticed the other day that I ran some command and the text for the output went over the background image. So, oh, that's kind of cool. I like that. But yeah, the calendar, that is a potential gotcha. Now I could just make my terminal wider. I've got a big screen here. That would solve that problem. Or there's also in the calendar, there's also a show GUI calendar option. And this will, let me drag this over here. Come on. So that'll create GUI calendars. Or if I can say, do that, let's do. I need to give it a month. So that's another option. I could just fire up my calendar just in a GUI and just move it over on the desktop. So this is using WPF, and it just runs in a run space, so it doesn't block my PowerShell prompt.
All right, yeah, and I think that's all the questions that we've had in the chat so far. I said that's all the questions we've had so far.
Oh, okay.
All right, well, Jeff, we appreciate you taking your time out of your day, kind of show us some of those cool little tips and tricks. I said we'll put all of this in the notes on the YouTube channel once that's posted. So, Thomas, do you want to tell us about who our next guest is?
Yeah, so near and dear to my heart in particular, some of you folks might remember a little thing called BridgeConf that we did a couple of weeks ago. We were originally scheduled to have one of those sessions was going to be Yop was going to do a session on debugging in PowerShell. but unfortunately he wasn't able to attend. And instead, we got a really excellent session from Rob on Jupyter Notebooks. But Yop is committed to giving that session, and we'll be here on June 9th at 2 p.m. Pacific time. We'll distribute some other time zone informations. But yeah, June 9th, we'll have Yop given his PowerShell debugging session, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah. So you can find all of the information online. It's at PowerShell.org/PSPowerHour. That's where we're keeping all the most up-to-date information. And in the link, we also have an every time zone link, so you can kind of help find what time zone it is for you. All right. Well, that's all the time we have. So we'll let you guys get back to it. And thank you guys for joining us. Appreciate it.